When I came home 2 days early from a long-haul delivery, I found my wife lying unconscious on the living room floor. My daughter-in-law barely looked up from her phone and shrugged. She's old, she probably just fell. My hands were shaking as I called 911. 7 minutes later, the paramedics rushed inside. But the moment the lead medic saw my daughter-in-law, his face drained of color. He quietly pulled me aside and whispered, "Sir, I need you to step into the kitchen, because there are some things about this address and about tonight that you need to hear before anyone else in this room does." Before we go any further, thank you for being here. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Country City. I want to know who is in this room with me today. Note, this story contains fictional elements added for storytelling and educational purposes. Names and settings are coincidental, but what it has to say is worth hearing. The Man Who Reads Rooms. My name is Leland Doss. I am 60 years old, and I have spent 35 of those years behind the wheel of a freight truck, long-haul cross-country, sleeping in truck stops, and eating whatever was still hot at 2 in the morning. I own Mid-South Freight LLC out of Franklin, Tennessee. That is a formal way of saying I am the man doing the driving more often than not, hauling industrial equipment and commercial goods between Nashville, Memphis, Louisville, and everywhere in between. People who have never driven long haul do not understand what it does to a person. It does not just teach you roads, it teaches you to read everything around you. Weather patterns, load, shifts the behavior of other drivers, the kind of stillness that tells you a bridge might be washed out 2 miles ahead. After 35 years, that ability does not stay in the cab. It follows you home, it sits with you at the kitchen table. It watches the room when you walk into a place. On the night of Wednesday, September the 24th, 2025, I turned on to Caldwell Ridge Lane at 11:23 in the evening, 2 full days ahead of my scheduled return, coming off a Memphis delivery that wrapped up faster than anyone had planned. I had not called ahead. I wanted to surprise Loretta, my wife of 40 years. The woman who had been leaving notes on my lunchboxes since 1987, who called me every single night, regardless of what state I was parked in, who could tell by the sound of my voice whether I had eaten a real meal or just a gas station sandwich. I had a small gift bag on the passenger seat. A pair of turquoise earrings she had pointed at through a shop window last spring, paused for a moment and said quietly, "Those are pretty." I had gone back and bought them the following week. I always remembered Loretta. I pulled into the driveway, shut off the engine, and grabbed the bag. The porch light was on. I unlocked the front door and pushed it open, and every single thing I thought I knew about that night disappeared in 1 second. Loretta was on the floor, not resting, not sitting. On the floor, flat on her back in the middle of the living room, her purse spilled open beside the sofa, a half-full glass of warm milk sitting on the coffee table beside her. Her eyes were closed. Her chest rose and fell in slow, uneven movements that made my stomach drop straight to the ground. Loretta. My voice came out louder than I intended. I crossed the room in 4 steps and dropped hard to my knees beside her, pressing 2 fingers to the side of her neck. "Loretta, can you hear me? Ret, open your eyes. Come on, open your eyes for me." Nothing. Her pulse was there, but it was slow. Too slow. And then I became aware of a sound behind me. The soft scroll of a thumb moving across a phone screen. I turned my head. Serena, my daughter-in-law, the woman who had been married to my son Wade for 4 years, was sitting in the armchair not 6 feet away. Legs crossed, phone in hand expression, as flat and unbothered as if she were waiting for a commercial break. She looked up at me and sighed. "She fell," Serena said. "She's been down for a few minutes. It's her circulation. This happens." My chest tightened so hard, I thought something had cracked. "You didn't call 911? I was getting around to it." She said it the way someone says they were getting around to doing laundry. I was already dialing. 911, what's your emergency? "My wife is unconscious on the living room floor," I said, forcing my voice to stay level when every nerve in my body was screaming. "She's breathing, but she will not respond. I need an ambulance immediately. The address is 4 Caldwell Ridge Lane, West Haven, Franklin, Tennessee." The dispatcher walked me through the next 6 minutes. "Stay on the line. Do not move her. Monitor her breathing. Unlock the front door." I followed every instruction with one hand on Loretta's wrist and one eye on the clock counting seconds. Serena put her phone down at some point and folded her hands in her lap. She watched me work with an expression I could not name. Not fear, not guilt, not even real concern. It was something closer to patience, the expression of someone who has already decided how the evening is going to go and is simply waiting for everyone else to catch up. That expression lodged itself in the back of my mind like a splinter. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. 2 paramedics came through the door with a gurney and equipment bags. Leading them was a man in his late 30s, broad-shouldered dark hair, graying at the temples, wearing the particular stillness of someone who has responded to too many emergencies to let his face react before his hands did. His badge identified him: Cruz Reyna, Team Lead, Williamson County Emergency Medical Services. Cruz Reyna walked into my living room and did something in the first 3 seconds that I noticed even through everything else going on. He read the room. His eyes moved Loretta on the floor, the milk glass on the table, me kneeling beside her, still gripping the gift bag, Serena sitting in the armchair with her hands folded and her face composed. His gaze stopped on Serena, 1 beat longer than a professional assessment required. Then he was on his knees beside Loretta. Serena moved forward, her voice shifting into something warmer, softer. She has circulation issues. Her primary care physician is fully aware. A Dr. Stout manages her medications. I prepared her evening supplements myself tonight. She had warm milk before bed, which she does every night. Cruz nodded. His hands kept working without pause. Has she had any alcohol this evening? No, she doesn't drink. Any falls in the past several months that you're aware of? Serena answered without hesitating, fluently, with the kind of specific detail, timing, context, Loretta's prior conditions that settled wrong somewhere behind my sternum. A worried daughter-in-law stumbles over those answers. She searches for them. Serena produced them the way someone reads from a document they have already memorized. Loretta was loaded onto the gurney. An oxygen mask covered her face. Her skin had gone the color of chalk. I grabbed the gift bag off the floor and followed them toward the door. Cruz stopped. He turned around and looked at me, not at Serena, at me. Mr. Doss, he said, his voice dropped low enough that only I could hear it. Can I speak with you for a moment in the kitchen? Not the first time. The kitchen smelled like the last meal Loretta had cooked 3 days ago, probably based on the faint trace of something warm and herbed still caught in the air. Rosemary. She loved rosemary on everything. Cruz Reyna closed the door behind us. He did not reach for a notepad. He did not touch his radio. He looked at me straight on, and I understood immediately that whatever he was about to say, he had been rehearsing it. Mr. Doss, he said, how long have you been away on this particular run? 6 days, I said. Left to last Thursday morning. Cruz drew one slow breath through his nose. I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear all of it before you respond. Can you do that for me? Something about the way he asked carefully, the way a person handles something they are afraid might shatter, made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. That talk, I said. My team has responded to this address 3 times in the past 11 months, Cruz said. Tonight is the 4th call. The floor did not fall out from under me. It tilted, slowly, like a truck losing load balance on a mountain grade. 3 times, I said. Yes, sir. The first call was in November of last year. Your wife was found unresponsive by your daughter-in-law, who reported a history of low blood pressure and circulation issues. The second call came in February, same presentation, same explanation. Third was in June. He kept his voice level and professional, but I could hear the weight underneath it, the particular heaviness of a man who had been carrying something too long and had finally found the right person to hand it to. Every single time we were told you were unreachable. I felt my jaw tighten until it ached. I was never contacted, not one time. No, sir. Your daughter-in-law told us each time that you were on a long haul and that interrupting you would cause unnecessary stress to both of you. Cruz paused. She was calm, detailed. She knew the medical terminology, the correct medication names, appropriate dosage ranges. It all sounded completely reasonable until the 3rd call. The blood work came back with elevated levels that did not match her explanation of a simple circulation episode. The numbers were higher than the previous visit. I filed a report with APS Adult Protective Services, the Tennessee state agency, that investigates suspected abuse and neglect of elderly individuals, but as of tonight, no formal investigation had been opened yet. 3 calls, 11 months. Loretta had been on that floor 4 times, and I had not known about a single one of them. My hands, the hands that had held a steering wheel, steady through ice storms and 14-hour overnight hauls without flinching, were not steady. I pressed them flat against the kitchen counter and made myself breathe through the heat, crawling up the back of my throat. "Why are you telling me now?" My voice came out rough ground down at the edges. "Because the dosage tonight is the highest we have seen," Cruz said. He did not look away from me. "And because when you walked through that front door, I watched your daughter-in-law's face. She was not afraid, Mr. Doss. She was not panicked. She was not even particularly surprised." He let the words settle between us. In 11 years of emergency response, I have learned to tell the difference between a person who is scared and a person who is performing. She was performing. There were things I wanted to say. Loud things. The kind that would have felt satisfying for approximately 30 seconds and accomplished nothing useful. Instead, I pressed the heels of my palms harder against that counter until the edge bit into my skin and I forced myself to think rather than react. 35 years of driving long haul teaches you one thing above everything else. A blown-out tire at 60 miles an hour does not respond to panic. It responds to control. "My wife needs me," I said finally. "She does," Cruz said. "Go." I rode in the back of the ambulance with Loretta. They had placed an oxygen mask over her face and started an IV line in her left hand. A young paramedic named Parker sat across from me, monitoring the equipment with quiet efficiency. I sat on the narrow bench beside the gurney and gripped the edge of it with both hands. Loretta looked so small. That thought kept hitting me in waves I could not brace for. This woman who had filled every room she walked into for 40 years, who laughed too loud at her own jokes, who argued back at the evening news like the anchor could hear her, who sang old country songs off-key at the top of her lungs every Sunday morning while making biscuits. She looked so small under that white sheet, under that oxygen mask, with a tube running into the back of her hand. I reached out and touched her fingers. They were cool. "Hold on, Rhett," I said low and close to her ear. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. You hear me? I'm right here." As we turned out of Caldwell Ridge Lane, I looked back through the small rear window of the ambulance. The neighborhood was dark and quiet, porch lights glowing at intervals down the block. Then I saw him, standing in the shadow of the oak tree at the property line between my yard and the yard next door, Silas Drummond, my neighbor of 12 years, and the kind of friend that only comes from surviving things together. He stood perfectly still, arms at his sides, watching the ambulance move away from the house. As we passed him, Silas gave one slow, deliberate nod. I did not know what it meant. I locked it away and kept it. Williamson Medical Center received us at 12 minutes past midnight. Loretta was taken through the automatic doors and into the organized urgency of the emergency department. I gave her name, her date of birth, our insurance information, every number and detail I knew by heart, to an admissions clerk who typed without looking up. Then I was shown to a waiting area and told a physician would be with me shortly. I sat down in a plastic chair the color of a hospital wall and looked at the small gift bag I was still holding. The turquoise earrings. I had not put them down once. 22 minutes later, a doctor in green scrubs pushed through the double doors at the far end of the hall. She was in her early 40s, short dark hair, with the focused no-nonsense presence of someone who had practiced emergency medicine long enough to keep her expression controlled under pressure. But as she walked toward me, I saw it anyway, a tightness at the corners of her eyes, a careful set to her jaw that told me she had already decided how to begin a conversation she did not want to have. Her badge read, Dr. Sandra Hale, Emergency Medicine, Williamson Medical Center. She stopped in front of me. "Mr. Doss." "Yes." "I would like to speak with you privately," she said. "There are some initial panel results I need to go over with you." She did not smile when she said it. The waiting room. The private room Dr. Hale used was barely large enough for 2 chairs and a small table. There was a box of tissues positioned in the center of that table, and I noticed it the moment I sat down. In my experience, rooms where doctors pre-position tissue boxes are not rooms where doctors come in to tell you that everything is going to be fine. She sat across from me and spoke without unnecessary softening. Loretta was being stabilized in the emergency unit. Vitals were coming up from where they had been when we arrived. The initial blood work had flagged several items that required a full toxicology panel, a comprehensive screen, to identify exactly what substances were present in her system, at what concentrations and in what combinations. Results would take 2 to 3 hours. "Is she going to be all right?" I asked. "Her vitals are improving," Dr. Hale said carefully. "We are managing her condition actively. I will have a significantly clearer picture for you once the full panel is complete. A doctor who can tell you that the person you love is going to be fine says so in the first sentence. Dr. Hale had not said it in the first sentence. She had not said it at all. I thanked her and walked out to the second-floor waiting area. The waiting room at Williamson Medical Center at 12:47 in the morning is the kind of place designed to strip away every distraction until only the thing you are most afraid of remains. Plastic chairs in a shade of blue that belongs nowhere in the natural world. A television mounted high in the corner, cycling through cable news with the volume off, captions running half a second behind the footage. A vending machine in the hallway, making a low, persistent electrical hum. Fluorescent overhead lights that have no interest in being kind to anyone sitting beneath them. I set the gift bag on the chair beside me. Then I opened my phone, found the family health insurance portal, and started reading. 35 years of running freight teaches you something that has nothing directly to do with trucks. It teaches you that every load tells a story. Weight distribution, origin point, timing, routing. If you know how to read the numbers, they tell you exactly what happened and when. I had never applied that particular skill to medical records before. I started applying it that night. Loretta's file went back 18 months. Most of it was exactly what 40 years of careful living looked like: annual physicals. With her longtime doctor, a prescription renewal for blood pressure medication she had been on for years, a follow-up after a minor cold the previous winter. Normal, steady. The kind of record that makes sense. And then 11 months back, something appeared that did not make sense. A prescription entry from a clinic I had never seen on any document in 4 decades of marriage. Route 96, Family Walk-In Clinic, Franklin, Tennessee. The prescribing physician was listed as Dr. Philip Stout. I had never heard that name once. I read the entry twice, then I scrolled down. There was another one from the same clinic, same physician, then another. I was still counting slowly, the way you count inventory, when you suspect something is off and you need the exact number before you say a word, when the elevator at the end of the hallway chimed. Serena walked in at 1:15 in the morning. She looked as though she had spent the preceding 40 minutes preparing for a dinner reservation. Her hair was arranged. She wore a clean gray cardigan over dark jeans. Her makeup was understated in exactly the right measure, not so little that she seemed careless, not so much that she seemed performative. She crossed the waiting room with a measured, quiet concern written across her face and sat down in the chair to my left. Then she placed her hand on my forearm. "How is she?" Serena asked. Her voice carried the precise weight of someone holding themselves together for the people around them. I looked at her hand. Not her face, her hand. In 35 years of negotiating freight contracts with people who did not always intend to honor them, I had learned one reliable truth: a person can train their face to express almost anything. Their hands are considerably harder to manage. A frightened person grips. A guilty person pulls back without realizing it. A person in genuine distress presses closer, reaches for contact. Hands tell you more than faces ever will. Serena's hand rested on my forearm with total, absolute stillness. Not a tremor, not a single adjustment. She might have set her hand on a countertop. "The doctors are running tests," I said. "We are waiting on results." "She is going to be okay," Serena said. She nodded once, slow, reassuring the nod of a person who has their emotions in the perfect order. "She is stronger than she looks. You know that." I made a sound that was not agreement and turned back to my phone. Wade arrived at 1:52 in the morning, 37 minutes after his wife. "I want to be honest with you about my son, because he matters to this story, and you deserve to understand who he is before everything else comes into focus." Wade Doss is 33 years old. He has Loretta's eyes and a stubbornness that goes back 3 generations. He managed commercial properties in Nashville. He coached a youth baseball team every Saturday. He called his mother every Sunday without exception, from wherever he was for years. I am telling you all of that so you understand what it meant when he walked into that waiting room at 1:52 in the morning, wearing a shirt that had not been ironed, with his hair unwashed and his eyes pointed at a spot somewhere between the floor and my shoulder. He did not hug me. He did not ask about his mother. He sat down across from Serena, rubbed his face with both hands hard enough that his cheeks reddened, and pulled his phone from his pocket. The screen lit up the moment he looked at it. Unknown number. His jaw tightened. He glanced up at Serena, a fast, urgent look that she answered with the smallest shake of her head. Then he pushed himself to his feet and muttered something about needing water, and walked out through the double doors to the hallway. Something cold moved through my chest. I let him go. I turned back to my phone. I kept counting. I stopped at 9. 9 separate prescription entries. 9 visits to a walk-in clinic on Route 96 that I had never heard of. 9 entries bearing the name of a physician my wife had never once mentioned in 40 years of sharing every detail of her life with me, including every doctor's visit, every prescription, every vitamin she had ever taken. 9. Blue light audit. The thing about reading numbers late at night in a silent room is that after a certain point the numbers stop being abstract. They become physical. Each one lands somewhere in your chest, and they accumulate the way water accumulates in a low spot on the road, slowly at first and then all at once. By 2 in the morning, the waiting room had thinned to me. A young man asleep in the far corner, with his head tilted against the wall and the vending machine still running through its electrical hum in the hallway. Serena was 3 chairs to my right, phone in hand, scrolling at the pace of someone browsing, and not someone waiting for news of a person she loved. I stopped watching her and went back to my screen. The 9 prescriptions from Route 96 Family Walk-In Clinic were, it turned out, only part of it. Buried below them in the insurance record were 3 additional entries from the same address, the same Dr. Philip Stout, the same walk-in clinic. But these 3 listed a different medication entirely, a compound I did not recognize at all, which I looked up on my phone in the blue-lit quiet of that waiting room. Scopolamine-based formulation, used medically in very low doses for motion sickness and pre-surgical sedation. At higher concentrations or administered repeatedly over time, it could cause significant short-term memory impairment, disorientation, and an inability to form clear recollections of recent events. I turned the screen over and rested it against my thigh. I looked at the ceiling. I pulled one long, controlled breath in through my nose and released it slowly through my mouth. It is the breath I use when a load shifts, and I have approximately 2 seconds to decide what to do with 40,000 pounds of moving weight on a wet interstate. It is the breath that buys you the difference between a controlled stop and an uncontrolled one. Then I picked the phone back up and started cross-referencing. My travel logs were back at the office, but I have driven the same corridors for 35 years. I know my schedule the way a musician knows their own compositions, not because they memorized it, but because they lived it until it became part of them. November, February, June. The 3 dates of the previous emergency calls, the dates crews had named in my kitchen 4 hours ago. I laid them against my memory one by one. November, Memphis run, 4 nights. February, Louisville to Knoxville circuit, 5 nights. June, Memphis, 6 nights. Every prescription date, every emergency call date, every single one I had been out of state. Not one occurrence when I was home, not one. I stood up, walked out to the hallway, and away from where Serena was sitting, and called Renee Calhoun. Renee is the operations and HR coordinator at Mid-South Freight, the woman who has kept my company's dispatch records, personnel files, and route documentation in order for the past 6 years. She is 52 years old, runs the office with the organizational precision of someone who has never once misplaced a piece of paper, and has answered my calls at unreasonable hours without complaint on more than one occasion. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Leland, it is 2:30 in the morning." "I know," I said. "I need the full travel log going back 18 months, every departure date, every return, every state I was operating in. I need it on HR company letterhead and in my email before 6 a.m. A pause. "Is everything all right?" "It will be," I said. "I need the records first." Another pause, shorter this time. Renee has worked with me long enough to distinguish between a situation that requires clarification and one that requires action. "Done," she said. "Check your inbox by 5:50. I ended the call and typed a message to Diana Frost, an attorney I had used several years ago for a contract dispute, a woman who had won that case so thoroughly that the other party's lawyers had offered her a job. The message was 3 lines, "Need to meet tomorrow morning. 8 a.m., your office, emergency." Then I walked back into the waiting room. Serena looked up when I came through the door. She had put her phone down and folded her hands in her lap. "Any update?" she asked. "Still waiting," I said. I sat down 2 chairs away from her and picked my phone back up. She moved 1 seat closer. "Leland." Her voice had gone softer, the specific softness of someone bracing themselves to be vulnerable. "I owe you an apology. Tonight when she went down, I panicked. I did not call you immediately, and I should have. I should have called the second I found her, and I did not think clearly, and I am so sorry. She looked at me with her eyes a fraction too bright the way eyes look when someone is working to keep emotion from tipping over. The apology was immaculate. The timing, the self-blame, the slight catch in the voice, every element precisely placed to produce comfort in the person receiving it. It was the kind of apology that compels the other person to say, "No, no, do not be so hard on yourself. You did everything you could." I did not say that. "You had a hard night," I said. I kept my voice level and my face neutral. Serena nodded, accepting that. She reached across and squeezed my hand, once then withdrew. Her fingers were warm, completely dry. The hands of a person whose nervous system was not in fact in distress. I went back to the phone. By 3 a.m, I had drawn a timeline on the back of a fuel receipt from my jacket pocket. My travel dates on one side from memory, the prescription dates on the other. I drew a line between each matching pair. 12 lines. 12 connections. Not one gap, not one exception, not one date where the prescription had been filled on a day I was home. The pattern was not subtle. The pattern was not even trying to be subtle. It was the work of someone who had operated freely for long enough that they had stopped worrying about being checked. I folded the receipt and put it back in my pocket. At 3:21 in the morning, the double doors at the far end of the waiting area opened. Dr. Sandra Hale came through them with a tablet in one hand and a second physician slightly behind her, a younger man in scrubs who carried the body language of someone present to observe rather than to lead. Dr. Hale's eyes found mine across the room the moment she stepped through. "Mr. Doss," she said, "the complete panel is back. I need you to come with me right now, please." She looked briefly once in Serena's direction, then she turned back toward the doors without waiting for my response. The word "right now" and the way she said it told me everything about what was behind those doors. The warm drink. The consultation room had the particular cold of a space where the temperature is regulated for equipment rather than for the people who sit inside it. Dr. Sandra Hale settled across from me with her tablet propped at an angle between us, and she did not begin with background or context. She began with the findings. The complete toxicology panel identified 2 compounds in your wife's system, at levels that are clinically significant, she said. The first is diphenhydramine, the active ingredient found in common over-the-counter sleep aids. In a person of Mrs. Doss's age and body weight, the concentration we measured tonight would represent approximately 3 times the standard sedating dose. It would cause deep prolonged unconsciousness and significantly depress the cardiovascular system. She paused, holding my eyes. The second compound is a scopolamine-based formulation combined with a dextrose carrier. To be very direct with you, Mr. Doss, scopolamine at this concentration and in this delivery format is not available over the counter. It is not prescribed for standard home use. It is used in clinical settings for sedation, and at lower concentrations, administered repeatedly over time, it is known to disrupt the formation of short-term memories. A person receiving it would be sedated, then disoriented upon waking with no reliable recollection of what had occurred in the preceding hours. I had known in the way you sometimes know things before they are formally said what the answer was going to be. There is a profound difference, however, between knowing something in the abstract and hearing it stated aloud in a medical consultation room by a physician who has no reason to soften it. So she would not remember, I said. Whatever was done to her, she would have no memory of it. That is correct, Dr. Hale said. The sedation combined with the memory disruption would ensure it. She set the tablet flat on the table between us. Mr. Doss, the combination of these compounds at these concentrations is not consistent with an accidental overdose. It is not consistent with a medication error. It is consistent with deliberate and repeated administration over an extended period of time. She did not look away from me. Under Tennessee state law, I am a mandatory reporter. When a medical professional identifies evidence that strongly suggests an elderly patient is being harmed or exploited, we are required by statute to notify Adult Protective Services immediately. I filed that report 40 minutes ago. A caseworker will be reaching out to your family. I pressed the knuckles of my right hand against my mouth. I looked at the wall to my left for 3 measured seconds. Then I looked back at her. What happens to Loretta now? I asked. She is stable. Her vitals have been steadily improving since she arrived. The treatment protocol we have her on is clearing the compounds from her system, and all indicators suggest she will regain full consciousness within the next few hours. Dr. Hale's voice, which had been precise and clinical from the moment she introduced herself, shifted by one careful degree. "She is going to get through tonight, Mr. Doss." That was the sentence she had not said once until this moment. "Thank you, doctor," I said. They moved Loretta to ICU room 214 at 3:15 in the morning. A nurse named Calloway told me I could sit with her beginning at 3:40. Visiting hours in the ICU were restricted, but given the circumstances, they were making an accommodation. I carried the gift bag in with me. The room was quiet in the particular way of rooms filled with monitoring equipment, not truly silent, but layered with the steady rhythmic sounds of machines doing the work of confirming that a person is alive. An IV line ran into Loretta's left hand. A pulse oximeter clipped her index finger. The overhead lights had been dimmed to a low amber that made the room feel mercifully less like a hospital and more like a place where a person could rest. I sat in the chair beside the bed and placed the gift bag on the small table to her left. Then I folded my hands and waited. Loretta's eyes opened at 3:47 in the morning. She looked at the ceiling first. Then she turned her head and looked at me. For 3 seconds she did not recognize me. Her eyes moved over my face the way a person's eyes move over a stranger's face in a crowd searching for a point of reference, finding none. Her brow pulled together slightly. 3 seconds. I counted every one of them. I want to tell you what those 3 seconds felt like, but I do not have the language for it. My heart did not break. It would have been easier if it had. Instead, it stayed completely intact and simply received the full weight of what I was seeing. My wife of 40 years. The woman who had known my face longer than anyone alive, looking at me like she was trying to remember a name she had not thought of in years. And then something shifted behind her eyes. "Leland." Her voice came out rough and small and very far away. "Yeah, Rhett." My voice broke apart on the second word. I let it. "It's me. I'm right here." Her face changed all at once. The tears came so fast they were already running down her cheeks before she made a sound, and the sound she made was not a full cry. It was something smaller and more devastating than that, a single broken exhale that held 40 years of trust and relief and exhaustion in it simultaneously. I leaned forward and took both her hands in both of mine and held them without releasing them. There was nothing in the English language equal to that moment, and I was wise enough to not try to fill it. When she was steadier, when her breathing had evened out, her eyes drifted to the small gift bag on the table beside her. She looked from it to my face, and something warm broke through the tears. "You bought me something," she said softly. "Those turquoise earrings you pointed at in the spring," I said. "The ones in the shop window on 3rd. She made a sound that was half laugh and half sob, and it hit me somewhere behind the sternum in a way I was entirely unprepared for. "You remembered that?" "Loretta, I always remember." She squeezed my hands and held on. After a long moment, she began to talk carefully, haltingly, the way a person talks when they are trying to describe something they are not entirely certain was real. She told me about the gaps, mornings she had woken up unable to account for the previous afternoon, a heaviness in her legs that would not lift, a fog that settled over her some evenings and did not clear until the following day. "When you are away," Loretta said, "Serena makes me a warm drink before I go to sleep. She says it helps my circulation, something she researched herself." She looked down at our joined hands. "Warm milk, a little bitter underneath. But I always feel better in the morning, so I thought it was doing something good." My grip on her hands tightened. I kept my face steady. What does the bitter taste like, Rhett?" I asked, quietly, carefully. "Like medicine almost, but she told me it was a natural supplement." Loretta frowned at the memory. I trusted her. She was so careful about it. She always waited until I had finished every drop. I breathed. "Leland." Her voice dropped to something I had to lean forward to hear. "Sometimes, when you are away at night, I can hear them downstairs. Music playing, people laughing, glasses." She stopped. Her thumb pressed against the back of my hand. "But I cannot get up. My legs will not work, and I cannot get up no matter how hard I try. I thought it was a dream. I told myself it was a dream." She looked at me. Her eyes held the question she did not yet have words to ask. "You were not dreaming," I said. I stayed with Loretta until she fell into a natural sleep, real sleep, even breathing color returning slowly to her face. The monitors held steady. I watched the numbers until I trusted them. At 5:10 in the morning, I walked out of room 214 and stood in the corridor under the fluorescent lights. My phone showed one missed call from Silas Drummond received at 4:47 a.m. I pressed his name and called back. He picked up on the first ring, not the second. The first as though he had been sitting somewhere with the phone in his hand, waiting for exactly this moment. The man across the fence. The parking lot of Williamson Medical Center at 5:45 in the morning had the particular quality of outdoor spaces in the last few minutes, before full dawn, the darkness not yet gone but no longer confident in itself. The sky to the east had turned the color of a bruise in the slow process of healing. The air carried a coolness that September mornings in Tennessee deliver quietly without announcement. Silas Drummond was already there when I came through the automatic doors. He stood leaning against the front of his truck, a 2009 dark blue Silverado that he had driven since before I could reliably remember, with his arms crossed over his chest and his eyes fixed on the hospital entrance. I want to tell you who Silas Drummond is, because he is central to everything that follows and he deserves a proper description. He is 63 years old. He served 2 tours as an Army Ranger and came home with a right knee that never healed correctly and a way of speaking that military service had stripped to its load-bearing elements, no decoration, no filler, only what the structure requires. He moved to Caldwell Ridge Lane 12 years ago as a widower, and we became the kind of friends that do not need maintenance. You can go 3 months without contact and pick up mid-sentence when you do. He has watched my house on every long run I have taken for the past decade. He drives in weather without being asked twice. He does not say things he is not certain of. That last part matters more than anything else I have told you about him. He had brought 2 gas station coffees. He handed me one without a word of explanation, the way a person hands something to someone who clearly needs it. We sat side by side on the hood of his truck. I held the cup without drinking. "Start from the beginning," I said. Silas nodded once. 8 months ago, he said. That is when I started paying close attention. He described what he had seen the way he described everything chronologically, factually, without embellishment. When I left for my long-haul runs, the house on Caldwell Ridge Lane changed in character. Cars he did not recognize appeared on the curb and in the driveway by 9 or 10 in the evening. Music drifted through walls and windows well past midnight. On clear nights when the weather allowed sound to travel, he could hear laughter and the percussion of glasses from inside his own kitchen. "Every time you were gone for 4 days or more," he said. "Not every single night, but consistently, regularly." "And Loretta?" I asked. My voice came out flatter than I intended. Silas paused. He adjusted the collar of his jacket. "The light in the upstairs front bedroom," he said. "Her room." He kept his gaze level and forward, not at me. "It was always dark, by 9 o'clock, 9:30 at the latest dark, every time the party was running downstairs." He cleared his throat once, a short, rough sound. I stood at my kitchen window more than once and stared at that dark window Leland. I told myself I did not know what it meant, that it was not my business. He stopped. I was wrong to wait as long as I did. I know that. Something compressed in my chest, with enough force that I had to set the coffee cup down on the hood of the truck before I lost my grip on it. "You could not have known what it meant," I said. "I suspected," Silas said. "There is a difference between not knowing and not looking hard enough." He was right. I did not argue. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced his phone. He opened a folder labeled with a date from 6 months prior and turned the screen toward me. Security camera footage mounted on a post at the property line between his yard and mine. Wide angle, reasonably clear, time stamped in the lower corner. "This man came to your house," Silas said. "Gray sedan." He parked down the street and walked up. The footage showed someone I did not recognize. Heavy-set mid to late 30s, wearing a jacket with a company logo. I could not resolve at this resolution. He and Wade stood in the driveway for just over 8 minutes. The body language between them required no interpretation. Wade backing up in small increments, both hands raised slightly at hip level, the posture of a man trying to make a problem smaller by making himself smaller. The other man's posture did not change at all. "He came back 2 months later," Silas said, swiping to a second clip. "That time, Wade let him inside. He was in there for 40 minutes. "Who is he?" I asked. "Took me some time to run the plate," Silas said. "Private debt collection firm out of Nashville, the kind of outfit that handles high-risk personal accounts, gambling debts, personal loans that have gone well past due." He looked at me briefly, then back at the horizon. I could not find anything about Wade by name through public records, but I know what that kind of visit looks like. I have seen it before. The shape of it was forming in my mind, the way a route forms before you have driven it, assembled from the information you have been given, piece by piece, until the road becomes visible. 3 weeks ago, Silas said, Cruz Reyna called me. I looked at him directly. You know Cruz, from 2019, the county ran a community emergency response volunteer program. We were in the same training cohort for about 4 months. He pocketed his phone. When he started watching your address after the third call, he pulled the neighbor registry and cross-referenced it for anyone with emergency response background. My name came up. He called me because he needed someone on the ground who knew you and could be trusted to observe without tipping anything off. Silas turned to look at me fully for the first time since we had sat down. He did not have enough to go to law enforcement yet. He needed eyes at the address. And you were the eyes, I said. For 3 weeks, he said. He reached into his jacket again. This time he held the phone differently, not showing me footage, but holding it so I could see a voice memo application open on the screen. The file was labeled with a date from 3 weeks ago. Cruz recorded this on his personal phone the night of the third call, Silas said. He was still at the address sitting in the rig before he pulled away. Tennessee is a one-party consent state. That means if you are part of a conversation, you are legally permitted to record it without notifying the other party. He sent it to me because he wanted someone you trusted to have it before any official action was possible. He held the phone level between us. You need to hear this. Everything else I have to tell you makes more sense after you hear it. His thumb moved to the play icon. And after you hear it, he said, his voice dropping half a register, I am going to tell you what I did, about a month ago, without asking you first. His eyes met mine, steady, certain, carrying the weight of a man who had made a decision and was prepared to stand behind it. If you are angry when I tell you, that is your right, but I believe you will understand it. He pressed play. Press play. This recording had been made the night of the third emergency call, months before tonight, long before the toxicology panel, long before I walked through that front door. There was no introduction, no preamble. He simply began. September 3rd. Third response to 4 Caldwell Ridge Lane. Patient Loretta Doss, female 60 years of age. Patient presented unconscious on living room floor. Daughter-in-law on scene identified as Serena Doss. A pause. The soft ambient sound of a vehicle interior. Subject provided the following information voluntarily, and without being specifically prompted. Referenced diphenhydramine by its clinical name, described a contraindication with the patient's existing blood pressure prescription, and suggested a scopolamine derivative as a possible contributing factor to what she characterized as a circulation episode. She referenced Dr. Philip Stout by full name and identified him as the patient's managing physician for supplemental care. Another pause. This level of pharmacological specificity is not consistent with a non-medical individual casually describing a family member's health situation. It is consistent with a person who has reviewed clinical documentation or possesses direct medical knowledge of the compounds in question. Cruz's voice shifted in its final sentences, not dramatically, but the documentation tone gave way to something more direct. I am filing a report with Adult Protective Services when I return to the station tonight. The recording ended. I looked at the middle distance between the truck and the hospital entrance. The parking lot surface was wet from overnight dew, and the rising light caught in it in long, irregular strips. The medication names she used, I said. My voice came out level. I was working to keep it that way. Those are not words that people just know, not like that. Not in that order with those specific connections. No, Silas said. They are not. I handed the phone back to him. He put it in his jacket pocket. Tell me what you did, I said. The thing you did not ask me about first. Silas turned to face me. He placed both hands flat on his knees, the posture of a man delivering something he has thought through more than once. About a month ago, Serena took her car in for a scheduled service. She was gone for just under 2 hours. I had your spare key, the one you gave me 4 years ago, with standing instructions to check the house whenever something felt wrong. He looked at me steadily. I decided something felt wrong. You went inside, I said. I went inside. I checked the kitchen, the cabinet under the back left corner of the counter, the one with the latch that catches if you don't lift and pull at the same time. I know the one. There was a small plastic container in there, no label, no manufacturer's markings, no prescription information of any kind. Just a screw-top container with off-white tablets. He kept his eyes on me. I photographed them and sent the image to a pharmacist I know in Brentwood. She told me she could not make a positive identification from a photograph alone, but that the physical characteristics were consistent with a compound tablet, a custom-blended formulation, not a commercial product. "What did you do with them?" "I discarded every single one," Silas said. "Then I replaced them with vitamin C, comparable size, comparable color, and returned the container to exactly the position I had found it." I stepped off the hood of the truck and stood. The morning had brightened steadily around us, and I had barely noticed. I turned the information over in my mind, working the sequence the way I work, a complicated load manifest, finding the weight distribution, the center of gravity, the point where things were most likely to shift. "She noticed Loretta was different these past few weeks," I said. "More alert, harder to manage, because the compound was gone. The rest of it assembled itself clearly. So, tonight she used more. She had a secondary supply somewhere other than that cabinet, and when she used it, she calculated a higher dose to compensate for what she perceived as increasing resistance." "That is my reading of it as well," Silas said. "She overcorrected, used a concentration that produced results she could not explain away the way she had explained away the previous 3 calls. The piece that I had not expected was the one that mattered most. Silas, acting without permission on instinct and suspicion alone, had protected Loretta for 3 weeks, and in doing so had pushed Serena into overplaying her hand by a margin that no emergency physician could overlook. "I am not angry," I said. Silas exhaled a short sound through his nose that, from him, constituted visible relief. "I figured you wouldn't be," he said, "but I needed to say it to your face." I picked up the coffee cup from the hood. Lukewarm, mediocre gas station coffee. I drank half of it without stopping. "The man from the debt collection company," I said. "Wade was frightened of him." "Considerably," Silas said. "I need to know the amount and the source. Before I sit down with Diana Frost at 8 o'clock, I need to understand what kind of pressure Wade was under and for how long." I looked at my phone. 6:48 in the morning. The sky above the parking lot had cleared to a clean, uncomplicated September blue. "But before Diana, I need to find my son." Silas watched me. "You think he was involved?" "I think a man does not have a debt collector come to his front door twice without his wife being fully aware of it," I said. "And I think a woman who is aware of a debt that size does not leave it unaddressed unless that debt is already part of something she is building." I set the cup back down. "The question I cannot answer yet is whether Wade is a participant in what she built, or whether he is simply the material she used to build it." I started toward the hospital entrance. "Dick Leland," Silas said. I stopped. "Whatever answer you find in there." His voice was even deliberate. "He is still your son." I stood with that, for a long moment felt it land somewhere below the anger and the calculation, in the part of me that had taught Wade to throw a baseball and sat beside his hospital bed when he broke his arm at 12 years old. Then I pushed through the automatic doors. The sun. I raised. I found Wade at 7:08 in the morning, in the family alcove off the second floor ICU corridor, a narrow recessed space with a vinyl love seat, the color of old mustard, a side table fanned with magazines from the previous year, and a window that looked out over the hospital's east-facing parking structure. He was sitting alone with his elbows on his knees and his face pointed at the floor between his shoes. He heard me coming and looked up. His eyes reached mine for one full second, then dropped back to the floor. The expression on his face, that half-second look, before he looked away, was the expression of a man who has known a specific conversation was coming for a long time and has still not found a way to be ready for it. "He's Dad," he said. "Wade, don't go anywhere. I need 5 minutes." He nodded and pressed his hands together between his knees. I went back into the corridor, turned toward the window at the far end, and made 2 calls. The first was a quick search, Greystone Private Collections, Nashville, Tennessee. Their website described their services in the careful language of debt recovery firms, high-risk personal accounts, negotiated settlement structures, enforcement of outstanding balances. The client industries listed included personal lending and gaming account receivables. I had the shape of it already. The search confirmed the dimension. The second call was to Diana Frost. Diana is a civil and family law attorney based on 3rd Avenue North in Franklin, Tennessee. 16 years in practice, a client list built entirely on referrals in a professional manner that gives nothing away until she has everything she needs. I had retained her 6 years ago when a carrier short-waited 3 consecutive deliveries and disputed the manifest records. She won that case with documentation so thorough that the opposing counsel offered her a position before the ruling came down. She answered on the second ring. "Diana," I said, "I need you to check whether my son, Wade Doss, has outstanding personal debt with a firm called Greystone Private Collections out of Nashville, specifically gambling related. How fast can you do that? Or, ifors bestavos aside, how fast do you need it? I am sitting down with him in 5 minutes." A brief pause. 20 minutes, she said. "Go." I walked back to the alcove and sat down in the chair directly across from Wade. Not beside him, across. "Look at me," I said. He raised his head. His eyes were red and dry in the way eyes get when they have been working not to cry for several hours and are losing the effort. His jaw was set tightly enough that I could see the muscle working along the side of his face. "I am not here to fight," I said. "I am going to ask you some things, and I need honest answers. That is all I am asking for. Can you do that?" He let out a breath. "Yeah. How long has your mother been visiting a doctor named Philip Stout at a walk-in clinic on Route 96? Wade's hands, which had been loosely folded in his lap, went perfectly still. He looked at the table beside him and then back at my face, and the stillness in his body said everything before his voice caught up. "About 11 months, he said. Each word came out as though it cost him something to produce. "Did you know what Serena was putting in her drink?" His throat moved. He pressed his lips together so hard they went pale at the edges. "I didn't know the exact—" He stopped, exhaled shakily. "She told me it was mild, something to help Mom sleep better, something to keep her from worrying while you were gone." He rubbed one hand across his face, and the gesture came out rough and graceless, nothing performed about it. "Dad, I did not know it was doing what it was doing. I swear to you I didn't know the extent of it. But you knew something was in that drink that was not a vitamin," I said. He did not answer. He looked at the floor, and in the silence that came from him not answering, I heard everything I needed to hear. My phone buzzed against my palm. I turned the screen so Wade could see Diana's message without reading it aloud. $47,300. Greystone Private Collections, Nashville. Gambling account, outstanding balance. Enforcement deadline, 6 weeks. Wade stared at the number. His face did what a face does when the weight of something becomes too great to hold in position. It did not collapse dramatically, it simply gave up trying to look like anything other than what it was. His eyes went wet and his mouth pressed into a hard, miserable line. "She said she had a plan," he said. His voice was barely holding its shape. "She said no one would know, that by the time the insurance paid and the property transferred, we'd clear the debt and come out on the other side, and Mom would never. She wouldn't even—" He pressed both fists against his eyes for a moment, and when he lowered them, he looked like a man who had reached the bottom of a thing and found it exactly as terrible as he had feared. "I know what I did, Dad. You don't have to say it. I know." "I am not going to say it," I said. I leaned forward, put both forearms on my knees, and made sure he was looking at me before I spoke. "I am going to ask you one thing. One, do you want to do the right thing? Right now, today, before this goes any further, I will walk with you to whoever you need to talk to. I will stand there with you. You just have to tell me, yes." Wade looked at me. His eyes were red and raw, and something moved through them, a real thing, something I recognized from 33 years of knowing this face, an impulse toward the truth, toward the one decision that costs everything and gives you back something you cannot put a price on. He opened his mouth. The room shifted before I heard anything. Something in the air, the way sound moves differently when a doorway fills. Serena was standing in the doorway of the alcove with a cup of coffee in one hand and her phone in the other, and she was looking at Wade with an expression of warm, concerned attention that would have read as love to anyone who had not been watching her hands for the past 6 hours. "I brought you something," she said. Her voice was soft and caring in exactly the way it needed to be. "You haven't had anything since yesterday afternoon. You need to drink something, Wade." She set the coffee cup on the table beside the magazines and straightened up, and in straightening her eyes moved to Wade's face with a steadiness that had nothing warm in it at all. It was the look of a person issuing a directive in a language only one other person in the room could read. Wade's entire body changed. I watched it happen in real time. His shoulders shifted back, his jaw reset itself, and the thing that had been forming in his expression folded inward and put itself away somewhere I could no longer reach. He looked back at me. He picked up the coffee cup. His hands were not shaking. "I can't, Dad," he said. The words came out flat and final, worn smooth by the decision behind them. "I'm sorry." I looked at my son for a long moment. I looked at what he had chosen, and I looked at what that choice had cost him. I could see the cost on him in the set of his mouth and the weight behind his eyes. And I let myself feel that, briefly the way you let yourself feel a road hazard after you have already navigated it safely. Then I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked out of the alcove. In the corridor 4 steps from the door, I called Diana Frost. "Diana," I said, "pull everything you have on elder abuse statutes in Tennessee, criminal and civil, all of it." I checked my watch, 7:55 in the morning. "I will be at your office at 8. Before I reveal what Diana uncovered in those business records, something that rewrites the entire timeline of this story, drop the number 9 in the comments so I know you are still here with me. Every one of those comments means something. A note, before we continue, some elements of this story include fictional details shaped for narrative and educational purposes. If this is not the content you are looking for, this is a good moment to step away. No pressure, no judgment. Diana Frost. Diana Frost's office on 3rd Avenue North communicated competence before a single word was spoken inside it. The desk held exactly what it needed to hold a laptop, a legal pad, a coffee that had been started and set aside, and nothing decorative, nothing personal, visible from the client side. 16 years of winning cases in Franklin, Tennessee, had taught Diana that the most effective thing an attorney can project across a desk is complete, unhurried control. Her office reflected that principle in every surface. She was standing when I came in, which told me she had heard the outer door and had not chosen to stay seated. She shook my hand and gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down and start from the beginning," she said. "Don't leave anything out and don't edit it for me. I will decide what matters." I talked for 22 minutes without stopping. Diana listened with both hands flat on the desk and her eyes on my face, not on her notepad. When I finished, she picked up her pen, wrote 4 lines, and looked up. The toxicology results established deliberate repeated administration of sedating compounds to a person over 65. That satisfies aggravated neglect of an elderly or vulnerable adult under Tennessee Code. Annotated 39-15-508, a Class C felony carrying up to 15 years. The base neglect charge under 39-15-507 is a Class E felony and will be filed alongside it. Aggravated assault is a second charge in Tennessee that runs Class C as well, meaning 3 to 15 years. Stack them with the fraud counts, and the sentencing exposure becomes very significant. "What is the difference?" I asked. "The kind of number that does not leave room for minimization," Diana said. "The insurance fraud element, 9 fraudulent prescriptions, plus the compound formulations all billed through your family health coverage, brings federal exposure under 18 U.S.C. Section 1347, the Federal Healthcare Fraud Statute. Federal prosecutors pursue this. When the scheme is deliberate, systematic, and directed at a private insurance program, this qualifies on every count. That brings in federal resources alongside the county DA, which changes the weight of this case considerably. That brings in federal prosecutors and federal resources. It takes this well beyond what a county district attorney handles alone. She opened her laptop and turned the screen toward me. A Tennessee state business registration form. An LLC formed 4 years and 7 months ago. The registered agent was a name I had never encountered. The stated purpose was listed as real estate and healthcare facility investment. All this LLC, Diana said, holds a 3% equity stake in Clearview Behavioral Health Center, a private psychiatric and memory care facility in Brentwood. Clearview admits patients on the basis of physician certification. A licensed doctor provides written documentation confirming that a patient meets the clinical criteria for admission, and Clearview accepts them on that basis. She held my eyes. The physician on Clearview's approved authorization list, who handles a significant volume of their walk-in referrals, is Dr. Philip Stout. The pieces had been assembling themselves in the back of my mind since the night before. This was the piece that made the geometry complete. "When was the LLC formed?" I asked. 4 years and 7 months ago, Diana said. "Approximately 7 months before Serena married your son." There are moments when you see the full shape of something for the first time, and the seeing itself is a physical experience. This was one of those moments. Serena had not married into this plan. She had constructed the plan before she joined the family. Every component had been put in place before Wade ever put a ring on her finger. The physician relationship, the facility stake, the pharmaceutical knowledge, all of it pre-existing, waiting for the right household, the right asset profile, the right circumstances. And walk me through what would have happened, I said, if no one had stopped it. Diana folded her hands on the desk. Dr. Stout had already signed and filed documentation, certifying that Loretta showed signs of moderate to severe cognitive decline. I found the record this morning. With that certification in hand, Serena could petition the court for a conservatorship, a legal arrangement in which a designated person is authorized to manage the finances and property of an individual deemed unable to manage them independently. Your son Wade signed a medical authorization document 4 months ago. My jaw tightened. He told me he thought it was a healthcare directive. It may have been presented to him as one, Diana said carefully. A standard emergency authorization allowing a family member to make medical decisions if a patient is incapacitated is a document most people sign without extensive review because it sounds responsible and straightforward. What he actually signed was substantially broader. Whether he understood the scope of what he was authorizing is a question that matters enormously to his legal exposure, and it is something we will need to address separately. She paused. But the practical result is that the structural framework was complete. Physician certification filed, family authorization signed. Once Loretta was admitted to Clearview and formally classified as a legally incapacitated person, management of her financial accounts and her property could be transferred to the designated conservator, which, under the authorization Wade signed, would be Serena. I looked at the business registration document on the screen, 4 years ago, before the wedding. In 16 years, Diana said, I have seen a great deal of financial elder abuse. The opportunistic kind where someone takes advantage of a situation as it develops is the most common. This is not that. Her voice was level, but there was something underneath it. Not outrage. Diana Frost did not traffic in outrage, but a particular quality of deliberate emphasis. This was designed before the situation existed. What do we need to build the case? I asked. Everything you have described, the toxicology results, the prescription records, your travel logs, the APS report, Silas's footage, Dr. Hale's mandatory report. That is your foundation. She reached for her legal pad. But there is something I want to ask you about. The vanity mirror you gave Serena for her birthday last October. You mentioned it in passing while you were describing the timeline of when you began to suspect something was wrong. I remember it, I said. When you purchased it, was it a standard mirror or one of the smart home variety? The kind that connects to a home network? Something shifted in my attention. It connects to Wi-Fi, I said slowly. It came with an app. Diana looked at me with the precise forward-leaning expression of an attorney who has arrived at a conclusion before her client and is waiting for him to take the last step himself. I think, she said, that you should open that app right now. I pulled out my phone, found the app, pressed it open. The storage indicator filled the screen, 247 hours of footage, unreviewed. The mirror never lies. 6 months ago. I said I came home 4 days early from a Nashville run. I did not call ahead. Diana leaned back in her chair and watched me. I found Loretta sitting at the kitchen table at 2 in the afternoon with both hands around a coffee cup that had gone cold. She did not hear me come in through the front door. She did not look up until I said her name. I looked at Diana across the desk. When she did look up, she smiled the way you smile when you recognize someone. But it took a half second too long. The kind of half second that makes a person wonder whether they imagined it. I did not imagine it. I knew I did not imagine it even as I was telling myself that I had. Loretta had seemed fine by the time I had my jacket off. Serena was there within 20 minutes, explaining that Loretta had been having trouble sleeping and that it was catching up with her during the day. She recommended a doctor. She knew someone who handled supplemental care, she said. Her voice was warm and informed. I thanked her and drove back out Thursday morning and told myself I was building problems out of nothing. But 35 years of long-haul driving teaches a man that the instinct which fires in the back of your mind on a dark road at 2 in the morning, the one that says something is wrong 2 miles before you can see what it is worth more than any counter-argument you can construct against it. 2 weeks later, I ordered the mirror. A smart home vanity mirror with a concealed wide-angle camera built into the upper frame, motion-triggered recording, and continuous cloud storage accessible through an application on my phone. The recording runs in the background whether the mirror appears active or not. It stores everything. I had researched it carefully. I bought a standard decorative mirror as the stated gift. I gave Serena the smart mirror for her birthday in October, in the living room, in front of Wade and Loretta. She held it up, turned it once, and walked it to the wall beside the bookshelf. The wall that faced the center of the room, the kitchen doorway visible in its frame. "Perfect spot," she said, and set it there. She had chosen the best possible angle herself. I had checked the sightline before I ordered it. The kitchen doorway sat directly in the mirror's field of view, from that wall 12 feet back and centered. Diana connected my phone to her laptop and opened the footage archive on the larger screen. 6 months of recordings arranged in a date-stamped grid, hundreds of thumbnail images. "Chronologically," she said, pulling a legal pad toward her, "I will timestamp anything relevant. You tell me if you see something I would not have context to interpret." We moved through weeks of ordinary footage, the living room, in the patterns of daily life, Loretta reading in her chair, Serena passing through the frame, afternoon light shifting across the walls. The camera was sensitive and had captured thousands of small, unremarkable moments. Diana moved efficiently through them, pausing and releasing. Then she stopped. 4 months ago, Tuesday, 9:47 p.m. I had been in Memphis. The footage caught the far end of the kitchen counter through the open doorway. Serena stood at the counter with her back at a partial angle to the camera. In front of her was a glass of warm milk. In her right hand was the same small unlabeled container that Silas had described finding in the lower cabinet, and she was pressing several tablets from that container against the base of a ceramic mug, grinding them down with methodical, practiced pressure. Not the motion of someone doing something for the first time. The motion of someone who has done this so many times that it requires no particular concentration. When the powder was fine enough to satisfy her, she stirred it into the milk and watched the surface until it was clear. She tilted the glass slightly, examined it, added one more small measure from the container. Then she closed it, returned it to the cabinet, and picked up the glass. She was smiling slightly as she turned toward the stairs. Diana reached out and stopped the footage. She sat back from the screen, exhaled once through her nose, and said, "That is everything a prosecutor needs in a single clip. Motion method, the substance going into the drink, the deliberateness, and the smile." She picked up her pen and wrote without looking at the pad. Date time, the container visible in her hand, the cabinet she stores it in, all of it time-stamped. This clip alone, combined with Dr. Hale's toxicology results, establishes the delivery method beyond any reasonable argument. She let the footage continue. 3 weeks later in the archive, Serena appeared in the living room, in the middle of a weekday afternoon, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in the lower, flatter register she used when she believed she was not being observed. "The papers are ready," she said. "Wade already signed. We just need Stout to file before the end of the month. Once she's classified, we move on the house and the accounts. The timeline is tight but workable." She listened for several seconds. "I know the levels," she said, her voice sharpening. "I am managing it." A pause. "She is not going to remember any of it. That is the entire point." She ended the call and set her phone face down on the sofa cushion. Diana was writing rapidly. Stout by name, the classification process, the assets accounts, and the house all explicit. She tore the page and set it aside. Direct evidentiary connection between Serena and the fraudulent conservatorship plan. Combined with his signed records and your prescription documentation, this closes the loop on Dr. Stout's involvement. She tapped her pen against the new page. "Keep going." The third piece of footage came from a Friday night. 11:23 p.m. The living room was dark. The camera's night recording mode rendered everything in flat, pale monochrome. Serena was on the sofa with her phone pressed to her ear. Her posture was the most unguarded I had ever seen. Her feet tucked beneath her shoulders, loose, the body language of a person who believes they are completely alone. "She went down around 9, Serena said. Her voice was low and unhurried in the specific way of a private conversation. "You can park down the street like last time. Use the side door." A male voice answered, brief, 2 or 3 words caught through the compression of a phone microphone, recorded by a room camera in night mode. The audio quality was not clean enough to isolate the words clearly. "I know," Serena said. Her voice dropped further, a tone that did not belong in any conversation I had heard her have with anyone in my family. Me too. The call ended. She held the phone against her chest for a moment, tipped her head back, and looked at the ceiling with the closest expression to unguarded I had ever seen cross her face. Diana stopped the footage and turned to face me. "The male voice," she said. "Do you recognize it?" I had been listening to those few compressed words since the moment they played. There was something in the rhythm of them, something in the tone, a familiarity that sat just at the edge of my recognition, the way a name sits on the tip of your tongue before it arrives. "And not yet," I said, "but I have heard that voice before." What the footage shows. By 9:30 in the morning, Diana and I had been moving through the footage archive for nearly an hour. The legal pad she had started when I arrived now held 2 full pages of timestamps and case notes in her compact, even handwriting. Diana wrote without interruption, pausing the footage when something required documentation, resuming without comment. I sat across from her and watched the screen, and said only what needed to be said, which is the same discipline I apply on any long run. You conserve what can be conserved, and spend only what the road requires. The party footage was the part that landed differently from everything else. Not the clip of Serena grinding medication into warm milk that was clinical horror, something I could categorize and process as evidence. The party footage was different. It was personal. 5 separate nights over the past 8 months. The living room filled with faces I did not know, Jade Marlowe and Stephanie, whom Silas had identified from the street, and a rotating group of others who came and went, and whose names I never learned and never wanted to. The Bluetooth speaker Loretta and I had bought for the back porch 2 summers ago sat on the bookshelf carrying music through rooms I had paid for. Wine glasses on the coffee table, plates carried out from the kitchen, where hours or days before, Serena had stood at the counter with the unlabeled container and a spoon. Laughter in a house where my wife was lying upstairs, with her legs too heavy to carry her weight. The camera did not reach the 2nd floor. It could not show me Loretta's window from the inside, but I did not need it to. Silas had already shown me what that window looked like from the street, dark by 9 o'clock every time, and the footage in front of me now showed me what was happening on the ground floor while that window was dark. I pressed my palms flat on my knees and kept watching. "There is a second call," Diana said, pausing the footage on a date 6 weeks back. "Night recording mode again. The voice is slightly clearer." She pressed play. Serena on the sofa, same posture as before, feet tucked, phone close to her ear shoulders, loose in the particular way of a person who believes themselves completely unobserved. "She won't be a problem much longer," Serena said, her voice at the private lower register. 2 weeks 3 at the outside. Stout is stalling on the paperwork, but I'm managing it. A sound from the other end. "I'm not worried about the husband. He's on the road until next week." Another pause. Then Serena made a small sound low, warm in a way that had nothing to do with family, the sound of someone sharing a private moment with someone they know well enough to drop all performance around. The male voice answered. 5 words this time, cleaner than the first, recording the compression slightly less severe. I leaned forward in my chair until the edge of the desk pressed against my forearms. The rhythm of those 5 words was familiar in the way that something is familiar before you can name the source, the specific cadence of it, the way the syllables connected in a pattern my brain recognized from somewhere it could not yet retrieve. "Audio forensics will isolate and clean that," Diana said, writing, without looking at me. "We will have a confirmed voice identification before this case reaches a courtroom." She underlined the notation twice and continued. At 10:15, my phone vibrated against the corner of the desk. An email from Renee Calhoun, time-stamped 6:02. That morning, exactly as promised. 18 months of complete travel logs, every departure and return date, every state and city I had operated in, printed on official Mid-South Freight LLC letterhead, and signed by the HR director. I forwarded it to Diana without commentary. She received it, opened it, and added it to the shared evidence folder she had been building since I walked through her door. "The date correlation will be absolute," she said. "Every prescription date cross-referenced against every travel log entry. 12 matches with 0 exceptions. No attorney on the other side will be able to argue coincidence in front of a jury." By 10:40, the folder held everything. The toxicology results from Dr. Hale. The 9 fraudulent prescriptions, plus the 3 compound formulations billed through our family insurance. 18 months of verified travel logs from Renee Calhoun, HR certified. Cruz Reyna's personal audio recording. Silas Drummond's security camera footage, which included 2 recorded visits to the property. Silas had sent me the plate trace that morning. The individual Greystone had assigned to Wade's account was a man named Tommy Reeves. I gave Diana his name and the firm's, and she added both to the file. The APS mandatory report that Dr. Hale had filed, the conservatorship authorization document that Wade had signed 4 months ago, the 3 key clips from the mirror camera footage, the LLC business registration, and the Clearview equity documentation. And one more item that surprised me when Diana mentioned it. Margaret Hollins, Diana said. Miss Peg, I said. I called her at 7:30 this morning. Diana's voice carried the measured satisfaction of a person who has anticipated every move before the board was set. She has been observing the property for the better part of a year. Vehicles, hours, activity. She was prepared to make a written statement, and she signed it before 8 a.m. Diana set her pen down and looked at me across the desk. 47 pages. I have been practicing family and civil law in this county for 16 years, and I have never walked into a filing with a level of evidentiary completeness that comes close to this. She picked up her desk phone and dialed. Joyce, she said when the line connected, it's Diana Frost. I have a systematic elder abuse case, 18 months of documented evidence, multiple felony charges with state and federal exposure, 2 subjects. I need to bring this to your office today. A pause. This afternoon, I am sending the file ahead. She ended the call and looked at me. Joyce Whitfield is the Senior Adult Protective Services caseworker for Williamson County. 17 years in this role. She is thorough, and she takes these cases personally. Your file is in the right hands. I stood up and reached for my jacket on the back of the chair. Before we go to Whitfield, I said, I need to make one more stop. Diana watched me. My son, I said, I need to look at him one more time and give him one more opportunity to make the right decision. Not because I believe he will take it. I pulled the jacket on. Because I need to know that I gave it to him before I did anything else. That is the kind of man I need to be today, regardless of what he chooses. Diana held my eyes for a moment. Then she nodded once. She did not try to talk me out of it. One last question. I found Wade at 11:20 in the morning in the ground floor hospital cafeteria. Not the ICU alcove where I had spoken with him that morning, but down in the open space where ordinary visitors came for coffee and the nearest thing available to a normal hour. He was at a corner table with an untouched sandwich in front of him and his phone face down beside the plate. Serena was not with him. That was the first different thing. He looked up when I pulled out the chair across from him. He did not look away, and he did not look down at the table before meeting my eyes, which was itself a change from the Wade I had spoken to 4 hours earlier in the alcove, when every second of eye contact had required visible effort. His face had the quality of a person who has stopped managing what they are projecting and has simply settled into whatever is actually present underneath. I figured you'd come back, he said. I needed one more conversation. I said. I sat down, no phone on the table, no documents, no list of prescriptions or footage clips or dollar amounts. Just 2 people in a cafeteria with bad lighting and a sandwich nobody was going to eat. Dad, let me ask you something first, I said. I want you to answer it for yourself, not for me. I put my forearms on the table and kept my voice level. 20 years from now, when everything that is happening right now has run its full course and you know how it ended, what do you want to be able to say about what you chose today? Wade pressed both hands flat on the table and stared at them. His jaw tightened, and his eyes brightened with something he was working to hold back. That is not a fair question, he said. It is not meant to be fair, I said. It is meant to be honest. He dragged one hand over his face and exhaled like something was pulling him down from the inside. He looked at the sandwich, looked at the table. Then he looked up at me, and what I saw on his face in that moment was the closest thing to real I had observed from him since he had walked into the waiting room at 1:52 in the morning. Not performance, not fear management, not the careful blankness he had been wearing all night. Just grief. Open, complicated, bottom-of-the-well grief. I love her, Dad. His voice broke apart on the last word. I know what she did. I understand exactly what she did to Mom, and I know how bad it is, and I still... He pressed 3 fingers against his mouth for a moment, collecting himself. I am completely aware of how that sounds. I don't need you to tell me. I wasn't going to, I said. She told me it would be fine. The words came out rough, unpolished, with none of the careful framing he had used in the alcove hours earlier. She told me Mom would be comfortable and taken care of, and that we would get through the debt and come out the other side and nobody would ever have to know, and I wanted it to be true so badly. He pressed one fist briefly against his sternum, hard the way you press against something that physically hurts. That is not an excuse. I know it is not an excuse. I chose to believe something I had no real reason to believe, because believing it was easier than looking at what was actually in front of me. "And that is the most honest thing you have said to me in 18 months, I said. He looked at me, and something crossed his face. Gratitude and shame, at the same time side by side, the way those two things live together in a person who still knows the difference between right and wrong, but has been choosing wrong long enough that they have stopped expecting to deserve anything for knowing. "I cannot walk into that office with you," he said. His voice came back quieter, the decision fully made now, and the grief of it showing plainly. "If I do, I lose her. Whatever she has done, and I know what she has done, I still lose her." He looked down at his hands. "I know what the right thing is. I have known since last night, and I still can't do it today. I don't know what that makes me." I looked at my son for a long time, not at a case, not at a co-conspirator. At the 12-year-old boy who used to press his face against the front window glass on Sunday nights, when I was due home from a long haul watching for headlights in the dark. "Okay," I said, "now I know everything I needed to know." I stood up. Before I left the table, I stopped behind his chair and placed one hand on his shoulder, briefly firmly, the way you place your hand on something you are leaving behind you, without being able to stop caring about it. And then I walked out of the cafeteria without looking back. The Adult Protective Services office for Williamson County was on Murfreesboro Road, a 20-minute drive from the hospital. I was there by 12:50 in the afternoon. Joyce Whitfield met me at the front reception herself, rather than sending an assistant, which told me Diana's file had arrived with enough weight to warrant that particular courtesy. She was in her mid-50s with close-cropped gray hair and the unhurried, anchored quality of someone who has spent 17 years hearing the worst things families do to each other, and has learned to function inside that knowledge without being hollowed out by it. She shook my hand once firmly and walked me directly back to her office. Ms. Frost's documentation came through at 11. She said, settling across from me with the file open on her laptop. "I have reviewed the preliminary material. I need you to walk me through the sequence in your own words before we move forward." I talked for 18 minutes. Joyce Whitfield took notes without interrupting once. When I finished, she set her pen down and looked at the file on her screen. "In 17 years, as she said, I have managed cases of opportunistic elder financial abuse, cases of deliberate neglect, and cases of deliberate physical harm. What I am looking at right now is all three categories operating simultaneously, premeditated and sustained across 18 months. She picked up her pen again. "I am filing an emergency protective order petition with Judge Carla Bowen today. Judge Bowen handles elder protection orders for this county, and with this level of documented evidence, I expect her to sign before end of business." A pause. "I have also been in contact with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation since this morning. Given the federal fraud exposure, TB, I will be working alongside the county DA. They move quickly when the evidence is this complete." "And how long before formal charges?" I asked. "Faster than the other party will be prepared for," she said. She looked at me directly across the desk. "Mr. Doss, do you happen to know where Serena will be on Saturday evening?" "Please. When this be sure." I looked at her. I thought about the question, and then I remembered. Saturday. The birthday party she had been organizing for 3 weeks. The house on Caldwell Ridge Lane lit up the way it only got lit up when I was away. Jade Marlowe, Stephanie, and whoever else she had invited. The same house, the same living room. The space Loretta had painted herself in 2018 with a roller brush and a color she had been arguing for since 2015. Diana moved faster than I believed the system could move. In her words later, a case this complete does not wait for a convenient date. Judge Bowen signed the arrest warrant Friday morning. TBI had 24 hours to coordinate with Franklin PD. They used all of them. Joyce Whitfield wrote something on her notepad and did not look up. 40 years. I sat in the truck for a long time after I walked out of the APS office. This is something I have always done. When a delivery has been completed and I am not yet ready to pull back onto the road, I park. I do not turn the radio on. I do not check my phone. I sit with whatever has accumulated over the past several hours, and I let it settle the way cargo settles when a truck stops moving, finding its actual weight distribution, pressing against its constraints without the motion that was previously masking how heavy it was. The parking lot on Murfreesboro Road at 2 in the afternoon was unremarkable in every particular other cars, a stretch of asphalt, a row of young trees planted along the perimeter that had not yet grown tall enough to provide shade for anything at all. Loretta would have noticed those trees. She always noticed young things working to become themselves in difficult conditions. I thought about Loretta, not as a single image, not the oxygen mask or the IV line or the 3-second delay before she recognized my face, but as the full accumulated weight of 40 years of a person. The way you think about someone when they have been part of you long enough that trying to separate them from your own shape is like trying to separate the load from the frame that carries it. I thought about Loretta at 22, standing in the driveway of the rented house on Clearwater Street, the first time I drove away for a long haul. November, cold enough that her breath was visible. She had wrapped both arms around herself and called after me when I was already halfway down the block. Call me when you hit the state line. I called her from every state line for 35 years, without exception. From state lines I had crossed 100 times, and state lines I could not have named beforehand. I thought about the notes she tucked into my lunch boxes, small squares of paper folded once, and slipped beside whatever she had packed, never the same note twice. I saved the first 114. They are in a shoebox on the top shelf of the closet at Caldwell Ridge Lane. The house is cleaner when you're gone. I miss you anyway. Wade said your name in his sleep last night. That boy. Your coffee is still on the counter. You forgot it again. I drank it. It was bad. I thought about how many times I had called her from a truck stop at 2 in the morning and heard her pick up before the second ring finished, her voice already fully awake by the time she finished saying hello, because she knew the sound of my call and she had made a 40-year decision to answer it no matter what. Then I thought about the kitchen table, the cold coffee cup, the half second of not recognition. 6 months ago, my mistake was not placing my trust in Serena. You cannot hold yourself entirely responsible for trusting someone you had no specific reason to doubt. My mistake was older than Serena and simpler than anything she had engineered. In 35 years of driving away from that house, I had made a decision quietly, without naming it as a decision, that the home was the one place I did not need to audit. I had maintenance schedules and load manifests and insurance reviews for every operational element of my life. I had never once turned that same methodical attention toward the house I was driving away from. Asking hard questions about something you love is one of the more uncomfortable acts available to a person, and I had been choosing comfort for a long time. Loretta had paid for that choice. I pressed both hands against the steering wheel and held them there until the feeling was done burning through me and I could think straight again. My phone rang at 3:41 p.m. Diana. Judge Carla Bowen signed the emergency protective order at 3:47 p.m., she said. Serena is prohibited from contacting Loretta and prohibited from entering the property at Caldwell Ridge Lane. Wade's access to all joint financial accounts has been frozen pending TBI investigation. Dr. Stout has been formally notified to expect contact from the Bureau. Everything is in motion. The birthday party, I said, Saturday evening at the house. Joyce Whitfield confirmed the details with TBI this afternoon. Diana said, "They are coordinating the arrest with an officer of the court present. They want to know whether you are certain she will be there." "She has been planning that party for 3 weeks," I said. "She has posted about it. She will be at that house on Saturday evening with every person she wants to impress, doing exactly what she has been doing in that living room for the past 18 months. Then we will be ready," Diana said. A brief pause. "Leland, are you certain you want it done in that setting, in front of her guests?" I looked through the windshield at those young trees along the perimeter of the parking lot, not yet tall enough to cast shade on anything. "She chose that stage herself," I said. "She built her life in that house while my wife lay alone in the dark upstairs. She can answer for what she did in the same room where she did it." Diana said nothing further on the subject. I drove back to Williamson Medical and went up to room 214. Loretta was sitting up more than she had been that morning, color returning to her face in gradual increments. She smiled the full way when I came through the door, both eyes no delay. "You look like something the highway left behind," she said. "I've had a long day," I said. "You've had a long night and a long day, and you've been in those clothes since yesterday," she corrected. She patted the arm of the chair beside the bed. "Sit down before you collapse on me." I sat. She asked about the Memphis run, and I described it in more detail than the subject warranted, because she had always genuinely wanted to know about the routes, the cargo, the stops, the weather conditions, the diners along the way. She asked if I had eaten anything real. I told her about the cafeteria sandwich from that morning. She told me I should have known better than to eat a cafeteria sandwich. I told her she was right. She asked about Wade, and I told her he was working through things and doing the best he could with what he had in front of him. That was true in its way. She seemed to accept it. I stayed until she fell asleep. Then I stayed longer. Friday passed in that chair beside that bed. I slept there with my jacket over my shoulders, woke at 5 when the shift changed, ate something from the vending machine at the end of the hall, and was back in the chair before 6. Loretta woke, ate, talked, dozed. I answered every question she asked, and deflected the ones I could not answer without telling her what was coming. She let me deflect them, which is one of the kindnesses of 40 years she knew when to let me hold something until I was ready. Friday ended. On Saturday at 6:28 in the evening, my phone lit up on the chair arm beside me. A text from Diana Frost teams are in position. Birthday candles. The distance between Williamson Medical Center and 4 Caldwell Ridge Lane is 8.3 miles by the fastest route. I had driven it 4 times in 3 days. On Saturday evening, September 27th, 2025 at 6:28 p.m. I sat in room 214 with Diana's text glowing on my phone screen, and those 8.3 miles felt less like a road measurement and more like the distance between 2 entirely separate versions of the same night. What happened at the house that evening I know from what Diana and Joyce described to me afterward over the 2 days that followed. I was not there. I want to be clear about that from the beginning. I was in a hospital chair beside my wife, and I am going to tell you what happened at Caldwell Ridge Lane, the way I came to know it, piece by piece from the people who were. At 6:30 in the evening, the house was lit from every window. Serena had strung lights along the porch railing and arranged fresh flowers on the dining table. She had moved to the center of the living room, the same living room where 71 hours earlier, Loretta had been lying on the floor with her purse spilled open beside the sofa and a glass of warm milk on the coffee table. That coffee table was now covered in a white cloth. The sofa where Serena had sat, scrolling her phone while Loretta lay unconscious, had a decorative throw pillow on it. Jade Marlowe and Stefani had arrived early and were moving through the space arranging bottles and plates with the easy familiarity of people who had spent many evenings in that house during hours I had not been home to see them. Serena wore a red dress. Her hair was done. She moved through the room with the bright particular ease of a person who has no cause to be afraid of what the evening holds, filling glasses, accepting hugs, laughing on cue, thanking each person for coming with the specific warmth of a host who is genuinely glad the audience has arrived. At 6:41 p.m., she posted to Instagram. Diana showed it to me 2 days later. A wide shot of the decorated room, the flowers, the lights, the caption "Grateful for my people." At 6:45 p.m. in room 214, Loretta was awake and informing me that I was making her pillow situation worse. "Push it up, not sideways," she said. "Not sideways, Leland. You have done this 400 times." "I drive trucks," I said. "I have never claimed any skill with pillows." "You have no skill with pillows," she confirmed. "I have accepted this about you. I accepted it in 1988, and I have never revised my position." She resettled herself against the adjusted pillow, which was marginally better. "There. That is the best it is going to get." "I'll take it," I said. She looked at me with the particular attentiveness she had been deploying since the early years, the look that tells me she has noticed something I am not offering. "Where is your mind tonight, Leland?" "Right here," I said. "With you." "Part of it," she said. "The other part has been somewhere else since Thursday morning. I have not said anything because you clearly needed to keep it there, but I notice." She patted the back of my hand once briefly. "I am not asking you to tell me. I am just letting you know that I see it." I know you see it," I said. "You always see it." She settled back. A few minutes passed. She rearranged the blanket at her feet and asked me to hand her the cup of water on the bedside table and drank it slowly. Then she said in a tone designed to sound casual and succeeding only partially, "Is Serena all right?" I had been waiting for the question since I walked through the door. "She is exactly where she needs to be tonight," I said. Loretta looked at me steadily. "That is not an answer." "It is the most honest one I have right now," I said. I need you to trust me until I can give you a better one. 40 years of reading me applied to one brief assessment. Then she gave a small nod. All right, a pause. What about Wade? More complicated, I said. He has some difficult things to work through. He'll come out the other side of them eventually. Is he in trouble? He made some choices that have consequences, I said. He knows that. She looked at the window for a moment, then back at me. Did we fail him somewhere? She asked, quietly with genuine uncertainty. No, I said. We gave him everything he needed to make different choices. What he did with that is his. She nodded slowly, not satisfied exactly, but settling into it the way you settle into a truth that does not feel good, but that you recognize as true. She did not ask again. At 7:10, Loretta asked me to find her nurse because the IV line felt like it was catching. I went out to the corridor, found Nurse Calloway, who came in and adjusted it with 3 practiced movements, and when I returned, Loretta's eyes were already at half-mast. Don't go anywhere, she said, her voice blurring at the edges with approaching sleep. And not going anywhere, I said. You say that, she said. Then you come home with turquoise earrings. She was asleep before I could answer. At Caldwell Ridge Lane, according to Joyce, the party had reached its full height by 7 o'clock. 12 guests. Music carrying through the living room, from the speaker on the bookshelf, the same Bluetooth speaker Loretta and I had bought for the back porch in the summer of 2023. A birthday cake, 3 layers on the dining table, with the candles ready to be lit. Serena stood in the center of it all, with her glass of wine, and her red dress, and her laughter, and her guests. Wade stood at the far edge of the room near the kitchen hallway. He had not drunk from the glass in his hand since it was put there. He was watching the front door. He had, according to Joyce, been watching the front door all evening. By 7:30, Loretta was fully asleep, her breathing slow and even. The monitor held its numbers in the ranges the nurses had been satisfied with since that afternoon. I sat back in the chair and looked at the window. The sky had gone from deep orange to the particular blue-black of a Tennessee September evening. I looked at my watch, 7:38 p.m. I looked at my phone, 7:41 p.m. I looked at Loretta at her hands on the blanket, her face relaxed and unguarded color in her cheeks that had not been there 72 hours ago. At 7:42 p.m. my phone vibrated once. A message from Joyce Whitfield. 3 words. 2 minutes away. I read it. Then I lowered the phone to my knee and looked at my wife, really looked fully, without the rationing I had been applying for 3 days to the act of looking at someone you love who has been hurt. She looked peaceful. She looked like herself. 8.3 miles from where I was sitting in a room she had painted herself in 2018. A doorbell was about to ring. Before I tell you what happened when that doorbell rang on Saturday night, drop the word "ready" in the comments. Because what comes next is the moment this entire story has been building toward, and I want to know you are still here for it. Please note, certain parts of this story contain fictional elements added for storytelling and educational value. If you would rather not continue, this is a natural place to step away entirely your choice. The doorbell. I was not there when they walked in. I want to be direct about that before I tell you any of it, because the way I'm about to describe what happened might make it sound as though I watched it happen in real time, and I did not. I was 8.3 miles away in a hospital chair beside my wife with my phone on my knee and the monitor keeping its steady count beside her bed. What I know about the events at 4 Caldwell Ridge Lane on the evening of Saturday, September 27th, 2025, I know because Joyce Whitfield and Diana Frost described them to me over the following 2 days. Joyce methodically in the order things occurred, and Diana in her precise selective way, offering the details she judged would matter most, and leaving the rest unspoken. This is what they told me. The doorbell rang at 7:44 p.m. Serena was mid-sentence when the sound reached the room. Some small hosting logistics she was managing, the kind of thing a person does on autopilot when they have been hosting long enough. She paused. She looked toward the front door. She made a small gesture toward Jade. Jade opened the door. Officer Diego Chavez of the Franklin Police Department was the first person through it. 12 years on the force, Diana told me later, with the specific unhurried calm of someone who has assessed a situation in advance and found it within his capacity to manage. Officer Ruth Meade came in behind him. Behind Meade came Joyce Whitfield, a folder pressed against her chest. Behind Joyce came Diana Frost. According to Joyce, the music played for a few more seconds after they entered. No one had thought yet to stop it. and those remaining notes filled the room with a quality that made the guests turn and look one by one in a slow rotating awareness that something had fundamentally changed. Then the music stopped. Someone cut it, or perhaps someone simply moved away from where it was playing. Joyce was not certain. She only noticed that it stopped. Serena's eyes moved from Officer Chavez's badge to the folder in Joyce's hands. Her face did what the faces of very controlled people do when confronted with something they prepared for but did not expect. Quite now it went completely still for one precise moment, recalibrating before choosing the expression it wanted to present. She chose reasonable. She stepped forward half a step, not toward them, just a small repositioning that said she was engaging as an equal and said in the warm and measured register she had used every time she wanted something to be true that was not. I think there may be some confusion here. I am happy to speak with whoever is in charge and clear this up. Joyce Whitfield opened the folder. She placed the warrant on the edge of the dining table directly beside the three-tiered birthday cake, with its candles ready to be lit. Mrs. Serena Doss, Joyce said, I am Joyce Whitfield, Tennessee Department of Human Services Adult Protective Services. This is an arrest warrant authorizing the Franklin Police Department to take you into custody on the following charges. Criminal neglect of an elderly person under Tennessee Code. Annotated 39-15-507, aggravated assault, healthcare insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder financial abuse. She kept her eyes on Serena throughout. You will come with these officers. Serena looked at the warrant. She looked at the birthday cake. She looked at Joyce. And she said, with the composure of someone who has rehearsed contingency explanations for a long time, whatever my father-in-law has told you, you need to understand that he has not been home, and he does not have the full picture of what. Ma'am, Officer Chavez's voice wasn't loud, and it was not unkind. It simply did not leave room for what she had been building toward. Please stand up straight and extend your hands forward. That was the moment Diana told me, when Serena's jaw tightened visibly for one brief second, the first real expression to break through. Then it was gone. She straightened, extended her wrists, and held them level while Officer Chavez placed the handcuffs on them. The sound they made was small and specific, and in that room, it carried. Diana described the room in more detail than I expected, the kind of detail she said she had noticed because she knew I would want to know it. Jade made a sound, she told me. Small, involuntary. Marlowe stepped back. Stefani gripped the edge of the table. Not one of them said a word in Serena's defense. Not one of them moved toward her. Officer Meade crossed the room to the hallway near the kitchen, where Wade had been standing since the front door opened. He had not moved. His hands were at his sides, and the wine glass he had been holding all evening sat abandoned on the bookshelf behind him, untouched. Mr. Wade Doss, Officer Meade said, there is a warrant for your arrest on the charges of conspiracy and filing fraudulent legal documents. Please come with me. Wade looked at her. The single word that came out of him carried the weight of someone who had known for a long time that a specific thing was coming and had simply been failing every day to outrun it. Me? Yes, sir, Officer Meade said. He did not argue. He put his hands forward without being asked twice, and Officer Meade secured them. And his face, according to Joyce, was not the face of surprise. It was the face of a man who had crossed a line so gradually that he had stopped being able to see it and was only now standing on the far side of it where the full view was available. As Officer Chavez walked Serena toward the front door, Wade looked at her back, at the red dress, at the composed set of her shoulders. She did not turn around, not once, not for a single moment. She walked through the front door of 4 Caldwell Ridge Lane with her wrists cuffed and her chin level and her eyes forward, and she did not look back at the man who had signed the document and told himself he was protecting his family. Outside across the street, a porch light was on. Miss Peg Holland stood in her doorway with both arms folded watching. She watched Officer Chavez guide Serena into the back of the patrol car. She watched Officer Meade follow with Wade. And then, as the car doors closed, she gave one slow, deliberate nod. The same nod Silas Drummond had given in the dark of Caldwell Ridge Lane 3 nights ago, when the ambulance had carried Loretta away from the same address. At 7:52 p.m., my phone vibrated once in room 214. A message from Diana Frost, 4 words. Both of them, 7:52 p.m. I read it. I set the phone down on the chair arm, and for the first time in what felt like 3 full days, I let my face do what it needed to do, because the room was dim and Loretta was asleep, and there was no one present that I needed to hold myself together for. I sat in the half-dark for a few minutes with the monitor's steady rhythm beside me, and I breathed. Not in any particular way, just breathed. Then the blanket at the foot of the bed shifted. Loretta opened her eyes. They were heavy with sleep, but they were hers, fully hers, recognizing me from the first second without any delay at all. She looked at me in the dim room. She found my face and she held it, and whatever she saw there, she chose not to name. "Leland," she said softly, "can we go home?" I took her hand in both of mine. "A few more days, Rhett," I said. "Just a few more days." I drove home on Sunday morning for the first time since Wednesday night. The house at 4 Caldwell Ridge Lane looked identical from the outside. Same dark blue shutters Loretta had chosen in 2019. Same painted mailbox she had done by hand because the standard issue one did not suit her. The porch light was off. A newspaper from Thursday sat on the front steps, still rolled in its plastic sleeve. I unlocked the door and went in. There is a real and physical difference between a house that someone has recently lived in fully and a house that has been suddenly emptied of most of its weight. I have come home to this house after long haul runs well over 100 times, and it has never felt the way it felt that Sunday morning. A coffee cup sat on the kitchen counter, Serena's from Wednesday morning, the lipstick mark on the rim unchanged. The white tablecloth from the birthday party was still spread across the dining table. Loretta would not have left a tablecloth on the dining table for 40 minutes, let alone 4 days. I removed it, folded it, and put it in the trash. Then I walked through the house the way you walk through a facility you are inspecting, for the first time methodically, room by room, without sentiment. I looked at what Serena had rearranged over 4 years of living here. The living room furniture positioned differently from how Loretta had always positioned it. The kitchen cabinet relabeled in Serena's neat handwriting. The lower cabinet with the sticky latch standing empty, whatever Silas had replaced a month ago, was gone, and whatever secondary supply she had drawn from on Wednesday night had gone with her to evidence. Then I went to bed and slept for 9 hours without moving. Diana called Monday morning at 8:15. Both arraignments had been completed. Serena entered a not guilty plea across all charges. Wade entered not guilty as well, but his attorney had already contacted Joyce's office to begin discussion of cooperation terms. If Wade agreed to full cooperation and testified against Serena, the DA was prepared to reduce his charges to a misdemeanor filing offense with supervised probation. No jail time. Wade had called his attorney Sunday night and said he wanted to talk. The first right decision he had made in over a year. It did not undo anything, but it was the first one. The Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners had issued a temporary suspension of Stout's license. Clearview Behavioral Health Center was under state review. Serena's LLC was frozen by court order. The conservatorship authorization Wade had signed was declared null and void under Judge Bowen's emergency order. The property at Caldwell Ridge Lane was confirmed clear in our names. Before she ended the call, Diana said, "In 16 years of practice, I have never assembled a case from first contact to arraignment in 4 days. You did right by Loretta. I wanted you to know." I thanked her and sat at the kitchen table with the October morning coming through the window, looking at the empty chair across from me, the chair where Loretta had sat for every meal in that house since 1991. Loretta was discharged from Williamson Medical Center on Tuesday morning, October 1st. Dr. Hale confirmed her levels were clear and her vitals fully stable. Nurse Calloway hugged her at the door. Loretta told her the hospital's pillow arrangements left something to be desired, but that the nursing care had been genuinely excellent. I drove her home along the route I had driven 4 times in 6 days. She walked through the house slowly, room by room, the careful way of someone reacquainting themselves with a space they had been away from. She noticed the dining table was clear. She did not ask about the tablecloth. She made herself a cup of tea from the cabinet she had always kept it in and sat down in her chair. That evening I sat down across from her. "Rhett," I said, "I need to tell you everything, all of it." She folded her hands on the table. "All right," she said, "tell me." I told her all of it. When I finished, she looked at her hands, then at me. "How long did you know?" she said. "Before tonight. How long did you know that something was wrong?" I pulled one slow breath and held it for a second. Then I said, "About 6 months." Loretta's eyes did not widen. They stayed on my face and moved through something not anger, which I had braced for, but something harder to name. The expression of a person receiving information that redraws a map they thought they had already read correctly. 6 months, she said. I did not have anything concrete until Wednesday night, I said. I had a half second in March when something felt wrong, and then Serena gave me an explanation that was entirely plausible, and I chose to accept it rather than look harder. I built the camera into the mirror because the instinct would not leave me alone, but I never checked the footage. Not once. That is on me, not on anyone else. Loretta looked at the table for a long moment. Then she picked up her tea, which had gone cold, and drank it anyway. I should have told you about the drink, she said. The first time it tasted wrong, I told myself it was the supplement. I did not tell you because I did not want you worrying on the road. I have done that for 35 years, told you a little less than the whole truth, so you would not drive distracted. She set the cup down. That was my choice, and it was wrong. We both chose the comfortable interpretation, I said. Yes, she said very clearly. We did. She refilled the cup and sat back down. I am not going to hold that against you, and I am not going to hold it against myself beyond what it is worth to hold it. We are 60 years old, and we know better than to carry things longer than they need to be carried. She pushed the cup toward me. Drink that. I drank it. Is it over? She said. Almost, I said. There are still proceedings, a few more weeks. Then we work with almost, she said, and that was that. Wade testified on October 15th. He named every conversation, every document, everything Serena had told him that he had chosen to believe. He used those exact words, I chose to believe it, and Diana said the prosecutor had looked at his notepad for a moment after Wade said that and then moved on. I thought about the cafeteria, the fist pressed against his sternum. Dr. Philip Stout accepted a cooperation agreement on October 22nd, surrendering his license permanently. His testimony confirmed that Serena had approached him through a professional contact 14 months ago, with a structured financial offer in exchange for the certifications and the compound prescriptions. He had known what the compounds were for. He had provided them for money. On December 3rd, Serena entered a guilty plea. Wade received 18 months of supervised probation on a misdemeanor filing offense on December 5th. He moved out of Tennessee the following week. He sent a letter. Loretta opened it. Before I had the chance, read it, folded it, and placed it in the drawer by the sofa. We did not mention it again. I went to bed at 10 o'clock that night. At 11:15 I got up. There is a particular quality of quiet in a house when a person is still awake somewhere inside it, a certain weight to the air, a presence that stillness does not quite cover. I have noticed it for 40 years. I went to the top of the stairs and looked down. Loretta was at the kitchen table with a legal pad in front of her, and a pen in her hand and a cup of tea gone cold at her right elbow. She was not writing in a hurry. She wrote the way she did every task that mattered deliberately, checking what she had written, crossing a line here and there, going forward when she was satisfied. Her shoulders were straight. Her pen did not pause for long. I thought about going down. Then I went back to bed instead. It was not my statement to be part of. The courthouse in Franklin on the morning of December 15th was cold in the flat, honest way of Tennessee. December gray sky, bare trees, the wind off the parking structure carrying the smell of rain that had not yet arrived. Diana met us at the entrance and walked us through the building down a corridor that smelled of carpet cleaner and old wood and the institutional air of a space where consequential things happen inside unremarkable architecture. Judge Carla Bowen's courtroom was smaller than I had imagined. 30 rows of seating, mostly filled. I sat beside Loretta in the third row on the left side. Diana took the seat on my other side, with her briefcase across her knee and her face composed in the specific way Diana's face is always composed inside a courtroom. Serena was at the defense table in a dark blue jacket, the wardrobe of someone whose attorney had advised her carefully on the visual impression required for sentencing mitigation. She did not look at our row once. Judge Bowen called for victim impact statements at 10:14 in the morning. Loretta stood up. She walked to the podium carrying the legal pad she had spent 3 nights writing on, set it flat with one hand, and looked up not at the defense table, not at the gallery, at Judge Bowen. "My name is Loretta Ann Doss," she said. Her voice was steady and clear. "I am not going to tell this court what was done to me. This court already has the documentation. I am going to tell this court what I need them to understand. For 18 months, someone worked methodically to convince me that my mind was going, that my memory could not be trusted. I never fully believed it. Something in me knew the shape of my own mind even when it was being deliberately altered. I am still here. in my house, which I painted myself. I remember everything. That is what I want on the record. She walked back and sat down beside me. I reached across and took her hand. This is a family story, mine, and at its core it is a story of family betrayal. I am telling it because the truth of it deserves to be heard. What I learned? I waited too long to look at something I already sensed was wrong. I chose comfort over clarity and called it trust. It was not. Loving someone means staying awake enough to protect them. There is one moment I return to often. The night Loretta opened her eyes in that hospital room and found my face, I thanked God. Quietly, without ceremony. Because she was still there, and I was given one more chance to do what I should have done months earlier. This family story is not rare. Family betrayal does not arrive announced. It comes through warmth and plausible explanations and well-timed kindness. And family betrayal, in every version I have ever heard, is built on one person choosing not to look. Do not be like me. Ask the hard questions of the people you love, not to doubt them, but to protect them. Comfort is not the same as safety. If this family story stayed with you, if someone in your life came to mind while you listened, share it. Leave a word in the comments. And if you are not already subscribed to this channel, I would be grateful if you stayed. Thank you truly for following this all the way to the end. One final note, some of the stories ahead include fictional elements built for reflection and education. If that is not what you are looking for, please find content that serves you better. No obligation to stay. But if you are here, I am glad to have you.